Hi folks, this is Dr. Rob Sivers, the Carb Addiction Doc, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that I've chosen to call cultural keto. And it's again going to be a controversial subject, but I want you to think because there are many ways to skin this cat. Ooh, that's a horrible analogy, isn't it? There are many ways to adopt a healthy way of life. And really, ultimately, when we're talking about a ketogenic way of life or a ketogenic diet, what we're really talking about is something called insulin sensitivity. And there are several different ways to get insulin sensitivity. Don't be so boxed in by your erroneous beliefs or by your intense beliefs. The issue is not carbohydrates. Yep, the issue is not carbohydrates. The issue is your relationship with them. And there are several ways to modify that relationship. If you're fat, have had metabolic syndrome, have type 2 diabetes, have hypertension, that relationship is broken. That relationship is broken. But there are a few different ways to remedy it. Ultimately, what we want you to do is to remove carbohydrates, if you can, to remove carbohydrates from your way of life. And when I say if you can, it has nothing to do with your ability. Remove them from your environment if you are financially and socially able to do so. And most of us in this great country of the United States of America, of North America, are able to do that because very, very few people are so fiscally challenged and environmentally challenged that they can't live without carbohydrates. We may be poor, we may be wealthy, but we can live without them. So if you're going to remove carbohydrates, it is then what you replace them with is less important. You can go carnivore, you can go vegetarian. And if your personal preferences of your religion dictates that you'd rather be vegetarian, I'm okay with that. It's the carbohydrates that are the problem. So we have a vegetarian option and we have a ketogenic option. So if you are culturally or religiously vegetarian, let's say you're a Hindu, I have no problem with that, but then make sure you're getting adequate saturated fat and adequate protein of a diversity in your food, and there are certain accommodations that need to be made there, veganism being a diet of malnutrition. And we understand that. I've talked about that quite extensively. Both of those options, carnivore, omnicarnivore, or vegetarian, are possible. But here's another scenario. And I think this whole COVID virus thing has really brought this to life. The majority or a large percentage of people on the face of the earth are too poor to do a ketogenic diet. What does that mean? These are people, not anybody in America. I don't care who you are. Nobody's poor enough in the United States of America that they cannot find real food. And I'll argue that with anybody because there are enough philanthropic places in this country that will help you should you choose to. But there are people out there, my home country of South Africa, where people are on lockdown in the townships. India, where millions of people have returned to their villages and have very, very little. Other parts of Africa, where drought and famine are common. Those folks only have carbohydrates to subsist on. And this is where another concept has helped to create insulin sensitivity. My great friend Jason Fung understood this early on a decade ago when he started the whole intermittent fasting movement amongst a group of people who would not give up their carbohydrates. The issue is not carbohydrates. If we eat carbohydrates as a staple, but have long periods of time between that carbohydrate consumption, if we do not have the disease of excess, then subsistence on carbohydrates, as long as there is some other vegetable product or potentially some animal products occasionally in that diet to give us enough minerals, vitamins, trace elements, protein, and saturated fat, we human beings are incredibly adaptable. We can survive. So there are peasant communities, there are impoverished communities that still have rice as a fundamental, that still have sorghum or corn or maize as a fundamental staple. And as long as they have access to some animal products, some other vegetable products, some oils to supplement that food, eating a carbohydrate dominant meal once or maybe twice a day. But typically, some of those starving populations only get enough food once a day. They can be pretty healthy. The thing that gets them is parasitic and infectious diseases, not metabolic health. So when we study those populations, a large percentage of them are actually insulin sensitive, despite the fact that they eat massive amounts of carbohydrates. Yes, they're sugar dominant, but not to the excess that triggers the body to need to defend itself by resisting this tsunami of insulin. And that's an important consideration. However, in the postmodern world, there are very, very few people that ever need to resort to that type of subsistence. But it's a cool way of thinking about it, because insulin sensitivity is the metric. It's not about carbohydrates. So all the keto evangelists, all the carnivore evangelists, there are other options. Open yourself to that. I don't want you to apply that necessarily, but respect that for those hunter-gatherer people, particularly under the lockdown conditions they're on right now. And really what we have to focus on is not carbohydrates, but it's understanding the paradigm of insulin sensitivity, and that as a metric of health. If I've made you think, even if you're yelling and shouting at the screen right now, if I've made you think differently, I've done a good job. Thank you.